Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going to be talking about some tweaks, some balances, some changes that I would love to see made to Battlefield 4. Now, a game this complex simply can't be perfectly balanced when it ships. It's just got way too much testing to go through. There's got to be thousands of players playing it, trying out all these different ways of using vehicles and playing the game to figure out what the exploits are and all that stuff. You just simply can't catch everything in beta. So I'm not complaining about the state of the game, but now that we've been playing it for long enough, there are simply some obvious things that should be changed and some things that, in my opinion, if changed, would make a better title. So that's what we're going to be discussing. The first thing on the list is something that I consider to be one of the most annoying things in the game right now that is not related to server crashing or lag or anything like that, and that is squad spawning. Now, the squad spawning system has been updated in Battlefield 4, and it's funny how small adjustments, small tweaks can really change somebody's aggravation level or just the way a game plays out. And that is basically that you no longer have spawn-in vulnerability for a long time, and when you spawn in, you can die instantaneously. Now, the dev response to this is that they give you this little window in the bottom left corner that allows you to sort of see what's going on when you spawn, and that should be enough to let you know if you should spawn in an area and take the risk. Well, simply put, it just isn't enough information to really diagnose whether or not you're going to be dead upon spawning. And I think one of the biggest issues with it right now is that when you spawn in, you're actually visible to the enemy for like a second or two where your screen is still black. So you can spawn in and literally be looking at your death screen without ever having been standing up at all. And it's just incredibly aggravating, and it happens to me all the time, you know, 5, 6, 7 times a game. I'll just spawn in and insta-die to somebody who's already waiting there, ready to kill me. Now, the rationale behind changing this spawning system was to reduce that aggravation of being killed by somebody with spawn-in vulnerability. It was an aggravating situation, but it's nowhere near as aggravating as dying 5, 6, 7 times in a game to insta-deaths while spawning on people. In fact, in a lot of game modes, I was just stopping spawning on my squad mates entirely because I just felt like it wasn't worth the risk. I would spawn back at deployment, run the whole way, and try and figure out the danger zone that I was running into, rather than take the risk of backing up my teammates and instantly dying. So my aggravation levels have gone up considerably. I would love to either see it go back to the old way, or some small changes could be made to probably improve the system as it is currently, where perhaps instead of having that black screen when you spawn, get rid of that so you can instantaneously see where you are when you spawn in, giving you a higher chance of figuring out your surroundings and surviving an intense situation. Or we could implement a system also in addition to that that prevents you from spawning on players that have been shot or damaged in the last second or two. This would prevent you from spawning into essentially streams of bullets and insta-dying. So there's a few things we could do to the system to try and improve it, and I really think it does need an update because it's incredibly aggravating in its current state. The next thing I want to discuss is the cluttered overlay system. Currently, it's very easy to lose enemies due to the amount of triangles, the amount of markers on your screen. You have these really bright saturated markers, especially in obliteration with the bomb carrier, that just makes it very hard to see stuff. And there's been so many times where I just simply haven't shot enemies because I think they're friendlies, because there's so much blue markers behind them that it's either hard to see them or I think they're friendlies. This was an issue in BF3, but it seems to have compounded like 4 times in Battlefield 4. So I would love to see a way for DICE to try and minimize some of this overlay stuff going on, or reduce the contrast of it or the size of it or something, because in its current state I think it's just a little too much, and a lot of people have expressed similar opinions. And along the same lines, if the bomb icon in obliteration could be updated so that it only pulses like maybe once every 3 to 5 seconds rather than being always on, alerting people to the exact precise location of the bomb carrier, I think it would just make for a more interesting game and not insta-death every time you pick up that bomb. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is balancing DMRs, the entire classification of designated marksman rifles. These things, I don't know how else to put it, they suck. You know, I've heard some feedback from the community. Some people said they like it, and I honestly don't know how anybody can come to that conclusion. DMRs in Battlefield 3 did 50 damage maximum. You could 2-shot people in close quarters, 1-shot them. If you hit them in the head and you had that skill, and they were not overpowered. I really don't know how people thought they were like incredibly overpowered weapons. Sure, the M417 could dish out a lot of damage considering it did 50 damage per shot and had a 20 round magazine, but even then, you know, if you want to balance that gun, you just take away some of its bullets available to it and it starts to balance out a bit more. None of the DMRs in BF4 do 50 damage maximum. The highest damage is 43, meaning it's going to be a 3-shot kill for anybody, and that pretty much just takes these guns off the table in terms of being competitive in any freaking manner. Now, statistically, the DMRs look really interesting if you don't look at their damage models. They've got a bunch of different magazine capacity sizes, way different reload times, the rate of fire switch up on you, and then we've got the exact same damage model for most of the DMRs in the game, and it's a crappy damage model. We gotta give some of these DMRs a 50 maximum damage just to make it more interesting, and up their minimum damage too. 30 minimum damage on most of these, making it a 4-shot kill at long range. We gotta get that minimum damage to about 34 to prevent that 4-shot kill necessity. It needs to be a 3-shot kill at long range. These guns just aren't good enough right now. Okay, so DMR rant over. Let's move on to the vehicles. Now, I really like the vehicles in Battlefield 4, but there's been some pretty wonky exploits, and there's some huge imbalances with them right now. A lot of them are kind of new. DICE was playing around with some different concepts with them, and a lot of them have worked out, but many have not. Attack jets, for example, are ridiculously overpowered. I think most people will agree with that. They're great at taking down air vehicles. They're better than the stealth jets, which were intended to be the air-to-air jets. Attack jets are intended to be the air-to-ground jets. They can one-strafe helicopters if you have a good enough pilot. They just do massive damage. You can get JDAM bombs for them and just wreck everything on the ground. So we're back to a situation like in Battlefield 3 where you could have a 64-player conquest server and one great jet pilot could win the whole game for you. He could just change everything. He could dominate the skies, clear the skies, and then go and take out all the armor on the ground. And just putting that kind of power in one player seems to be a little too much. Now, it was supposed to be a rock, paper, scissors gameplay balance system here. There's nothing to beat the attack jet right now. It's rock, paper, scissors, and then attack jet that kills everything. Lowering the primary weapon damage versus air vehicles, and perhaps figuring out a way so that attack jets can't easily one-strafe most vehicles in the game would be a great way to start balancing them. Now, moving on to some of the helicopters, we've got the Scout helicopter, which is a lot of fun. There's been some weird updates to it, and right now, the passenger seats in this thing just keep it alive forever. It's essentially turned into the Black Hawk helicopter from Battlefield 2, where you could just repair them all day, nothing could take them down, they could absorb tank shots practically. Not quite so much with the Scout heli, but the idea is that you can just have 2 reppers on this thing keeping it alive forever. You can have them firing RPGs and stingers at armor and other air vehicles, and they've just turned into these incredibly powerful vehicles. I'm not sure if this was intended by the devs, but I think it's really become too overpowered. There's also some weird exploits where you can swap between pilot and passenger seats to recharge the flares instantaneously, and this allows you to basically infinitely block lock-on missiles. You might have seen this in a game. I've seen it a few times. Fired 5 stingers at a Scout helicopter that was not behind cover, and not a single one of them hit. So that was really, really weird and kind of upsetting when I realized that that exploit existed. So that simply has to be fixed, but the balancing aspect of this game, I think we could really start to fix it by lowering the repair amounts that engineers can do to this helicopter. We've got to lower the repair time on this chopper so that it can't simply just tank tons and tons of stinger hits and stay up in the air all day. Then we've got attack helicopters. Now, attack helicopters are pretty darn good. The only problem is that a lot of vehicles in the game simply dominate them, like the attack jet, so hopefully they will become better once certain vehicles get nerfed in their air-to-air abilities and stuff like that. One thing I would love to see changed with the attack helicopters is better damage from the gunner seat towards air vehicles. Currently, if you've ever seen an attack helicopter versus attack helicopter battle, those can go on for like 3-4 minutes sometimes because they're completely dependent on the pilots being able to dish out enough damage against each other, because the gunners simply just don't do enough right now. Or maybe it's a lag issue and there's hitbox issues and they just can't score enough direct hits. But either way, the gunners need to do a little bit more versus air. I'd also think that the primary weapons for attack helicopters need like one extra magazine capacity. Right now it just seems like you run out of your primary ammo so quickly, and then you gotta go run and recharge, that they just can't get in and simply do enough damage when sometimes you have a lot of easy to kill targets that are just right there, ripe for the picking, and you just simply don't have enough ammo to deal with them. You take out one tank and then you gotta go run away and recharge your ammo. I know a lot of people out there probably don't fly the attack heli a lot, so you're like, oh screw it, I don't care what happens to it. But in the interest of actually making a balanced vehicle game, they really do need a little bit of a buff, and hopefully the nerf of some of the other vehicles out there will kind of balance things out and have them performing nicely. Now the newcomer to the scene is the attack boat, which is a very powerful weapon, but it's also very vulnerable to air and stuff like that. People can sneak up on it and plant C4 on it in the water. They can ram it with a C4 jet ski. It's certainly got its vulnerabilities, but I think it could use one extra little vulnerability, and that is mobility hits. Now when you're in infantry, there's very little incentive to go after an attack boat, because once you're in line of sight of that thing, it's got lots of guns that can kill you really fast. It's got multiple gunners with miniguns. It's got a primary gun with explosive rounds that just wrecks everything. So you pretty much just want to hide when you see those things. Now if you had an RPG and you had the ability to get an easy mobility hit on an attack boat, keeping it from speeding away, then you could kind of keep it trapped in one area and try and take it out. Doesn't mean that you're not in a risky situation attacking the attack boat, but you would at least have a fighting chance, because right now when I hit one with an RPG or a small or even two, then it's like, oh, I'm getting some damage, I'm just gonna book it, and they just hit the turbo booster and get out of there, repair, and then come back when I'm not expecting it, and that's really aggravating. Now I'd love to see infantry get a little bit extra boost for fighting the attack boat. Now how about transport helis? Those things are fun. I think they serve their purpose well, but the miniguns are just garbage. It was mentioned in beta plenty of times. They're pretty much Nerf guns on the side of the attack heli, the transport heli, and the damage versus infantry simply has to be upped. I know they're probably the exact same miniguns you find on boats, but those boats are sort of in a more stationary position and they're much easier to aim. The transport heli needs to get the minigun damage upped, because right now it's just so painful trying to shoot those infantry targets, even the very easy to spot, easy to hit ones. Now generally I focus on weapon balance, vehicle balance, game mechanics, that sort of thing, but there's a map in Battlefield 4 that I feel suffers from just really bad vehicle choices, and that is the Conquest version of Langkang Dam. Right now you get two jets in there, a stealth jet and an attack jet per each side. You get an attack helicopter, I think there might even be a scout helicopter in there, and it basically turns into an air-dominated map. You also get the AC-130, which I think is just kind of annoying in any map, but certainly in this map as well. There's no cover on the ground for helicopters. The jets, once a good jet pilot's up in the air, he dominates the whole round, and the layout of the map itself geographically actually looks like it could be really interesting for land and sea battles, but you're never going to get to see that because the air just kind of flies in and wrecks everything. So I would love to see the jets gone from that map. I would love to see, instead of the attack helicopter, a transport helicopter, just have sort of the lighter helicopters in this map, and then let the attack boats actually duel it out and let the ground vehicles have some interesting urban combat in there before they get wrecked by everything that flies. Because right now Langkang Dam is by far my least favorite Conquest map, and I think it has the potential to actually be a really good one, and I would just hate to see all its potential be wasted on something as simple as bad vehicle spawns. So anyway, that's my list of changes, fixes I would love to see implemented to this game. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's fixes that you guys would like to see, or if you have better modifications than I had for fixing certain issues in the game. I would also love to hear those. And remember, when you're thinking of fixes or changes that you want devs to take into account, to think of practical changes, things that aren't going to require rewriting the entire game code, but more of just tweaks, modifications that are relatively easy to implement, and they're probably more likely going to happen. So as always, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.